Hello everyone, this is Alex from Bad Decks Play Badly. This is our second deck of my channel, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So the last deck I played, Boros Enchantments, was all about not attacking and stopping our opponents from attacking us whilst we gathered a massive board state. I thought this week, just to mix it up, I'd go the complete opposite and go all out attack, all or nothing, and see where that gets us. I know I could play just normal burn, but it seems like everyone's playing burn, and I thought this would be a little bit more interesting, and we're playing cards that you don't tend to see much. So I hope you enjoy this. I guess we'll get straight into it. This deck is basically built around this card here, Primal Forcemage. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. So how do we go about exploiting this? We basically play a lot of creatures with haste and with high damage, and just hope that we outrace our opponents. If you have any life gain or anything, it could be an issue for us, but if not, I think a lot of decks may have a hard time dealing with us. So we have four of them, Primal Forcemage. It's quite important to the deck. And I guess I'll start at the beginning. 1-drops. So how do we exploit this Primal Forcemage? Number 1, Spark Elemental. It's got trample, it's got haste, so when that comes down, you go in, attack, and at the beginning of your next end step, sacrifice Spark Elemental. Which isn't that big a deal, because with Primal Forcemage, that 3/1 will become a 5/3, which is pretty... oh, more than that, sorry, 6/4, which is fantastic, just for 1 mana. So it's a mandatory 1 slot for us. We've also got 4 copies of Vexing Devil. When it enters the battlefield, any opponent may have it deal 4 damage to them. If a player does, sacrifice Vexing Devil. So it's a good turn 1 drop where we either get left with a 4/3 on turn 1, or we deal 4 damage to our opponents. Both in this deck is good, so we can't really go wrong with that. Okay, in the 2-drop slot, we have Hellspark Elemental. And there's 4 of them. It's got trample and haste, just like Spark Elemental. And at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice it. So it's very similar to Spark Elemental. However, this one has Unearth, which is great. So we can play it once, do the damage. It sits in our graveyard, and then whenever we want, we can unearth it again and return it to the battlefield. It will get exiled after that, but for essentially 1 card, we can do 6 damage. So that's absolutely perfect. If we're flooding out, just play the Unearth. I've got 2 copies of Evolutionary Leap. This is one of the reasons for adding green to this deck. It works really well with these creatures which sacrifice themselves. So I play one of these creatures, it attacks, does the damage, and rather than just getting exiled or going to the graveyard, I can sacrifice it in my next main phase, and I can reveal cards from top of my library until I reveal a creature card. Put that card into my hand, and then the rest on the bottom of my library in a random order. So that's great. So essentially I can deal damage, sacrifice it, get another card, rinse, repeat. I've only got two of them in the deck. The reason for that is just because if you have more than one, they become useless and dead cards in your hand. So what we've got for the 3-drops. 4 Hell's Thunder. This is very similar to the other cards previously mentioned. It's got flying haste. I have to sacrifice it in my end step. It's a 4/4 flyer, so it has got evasion, which is nice. That's what, instead of trample, we have flying, which is actually probably better. And just like Hellspark Elemental, it has Unearth, so we can play it again. It costs 5 mana to do so. Very good card in this deck. We have 4 Bull Lightning. It's quite intensive on its mana cost with 3 mountains. I think we should be able to manage it. And just like Hellspark and Spark Elemental, exactly the same, but this time it's a 6/1. So if you add that to your Primal Forcemage, you're doing a lot of damage. We also have 2 copies of Ronin War Club. This is great in this deck because it basically makes our stuff bigger, which is what we want. And once we've played it for free 3 mana, it attaches itself to whatever's coming down on the battlefield. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, attach Ronin War Club to that creature. Because we tend to play one big creature at a time, this works very well, and it's just adding the extra bit of damage. Really, it's kind of like it's almost like the 5th and 6th copy of Primal Forcemage. And here we Bloodbraid Elf in the 4-drop. It's got haste 3/2. Well, that's what we want anyway, just haste. But it has Cascade, so when you cast this spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Put the exile card on the bottom of the library in a random order. So this is good. Well, it's good against control, and it's basically 2 for 1, a 2 for 1. If you notice, most of our big creatures are 3-drops, so we have 1, 2, 3. Well, this entire side can be cascaded into, so it's just fantastic value and a very good card in this deck. And to finish off in the main board, I have 3 copies of Blitz Hellion. This is one of those cards you just don't see very often in Modern, and I just wanted to play it. It doesn't fit in under Bloodbraid, but if you just naturally draw it, and you've got a Primal Forcemage on the battlefield, this becomes a 10/10 with Trample and Haste. Fantastic. I mean, by the end stage of the game, we should have whittled our opponent down to easily under 5 life. So once this hits and they can't remove it, that's all she wrote. That is basically what we want to do. So it's very different to the last deck, and I think it will be quite a lot of fun. I'm not sure how well it will do, but we shall see. For the land, I have 4 copies of Firelit Thicket. It's just a good budget land. 2 forests, just in case we get Path to Exile or Blood Moon or something. 4 game trails. As it enters the battlefield, I may reveal a mountain or a forest card, and it comes in untapped. I've got a lot of mountains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mountains and 2 forests. So that shouldn't be an issue. And last but not least, Carplusen Forest. It just comes in untapped, and I can deal 1 damage myself to add red or green mana. This isn't a big deal. I'm dishing out so much damage that 1 damage shouldn't really affect me in the race, which I'm obviously quite happy about. Yeah, and that's the main board. In the sideboard, I've got a lot of stuff, which is very situational, like all good sideboards should be. The only issue with this deck is quite hard. If you're going all out attack, you're not sure to sideboard in if it's too slow or whatever. So this is what I landed on. I've got 2 copies of Nile Spellbombs, and that's to counteract any graveyard decks. The reason I use this over Relic or anything else is exile all cards from target player's graveyard, so I can exile their cards from their graveyard, but I don't want to exile mine, which is why I'm not using Relic of Progenitus, because I do have a lot of unearthed cards. 1 copy of Pithy Needle, just for Planeswalkers, really, or any activated abilities. It's just good to bring in, just in case you're playing against, I don't know, a Super Friends deck, a lot of Planeswalkers, anything like that. I've got 2 copies of Damping Sphere. It's against Tron, so if a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces 1 colourless instead of any other type of and amount. Each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. It's just good against Tron, and yeah, if we get one of them down, they'll have a hard time playing their big stuff, at least until 5, 6, which hopefully by then they'll be dead. I've got 1 copy of Dragon Claw. It's just against burn, really, or other aggro decks. We play a lot of red, and if they play a lot of red, we can get quite a lot of life, and it should negate at least 1 or 2 bolts. And 1 copy of Lifecrafter's Bestiary. This is mainly against control decks. It just keeps us drawing through our deck, which is quite nice. Whenever we cast a creature spell, we may pay green. If we do, we draw a card. Just card advantage, just in case we're going against a lot of life gain or grindy matches. And on the plus side as well, we get to scry on our upkeep, which is very nice. Defense grid, another one for control decks. Each spell costs 3 more to cast except during its controller's turn. So we play everything in our turn, and if they want to counter us, it's going to cost them 3 more. Very nice. The mana leak will now cost 5. This is an interesting one you don't see in Modern too much. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Gruul Orrery. Okay. Each player may play an additional land on each of their turns at the beginning of each player's upkeep. If that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. It's another one against control over a game or we think a game's going to go long. The problem is with this deck, you can flood out very quickly, and you find yourself in a position where you're top decking and you're getting nothing going on. So that's just there. We think that may happen. We play lands and we just keep drawing 3 over and over again. If we play all our lands, we draw, which is very nice. The problem is our opponent gets to do that as well, so we really have to pick the matchup, but this could be very good. Another one that kind of stops any control. If we have a lot of removal early, something that stops us getting the early damage in. This here is Flame Wake Phoenix, and it does very well for just repeatable damage. We have a lot of cards which have 4 or greater power. So at the beginning of combat, on your turn, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you may pay a mountain. If you do, return Flame Wake Phoenix from the graveyard to the battlefield. So it's another way of just repeatable offense. And with our Primal Forcemage, that could be a very big flyer in the air, and it's just repeatable. That's what we want. We need more repeatable damage, and that's it. And last but not least, 3 copies of Reclamation Sage. When it enters the battlefield, I may destroy a target artifact or enchantment. It's self-explanatory. If they've got an artifact deck, or if they play a lot of enchantments which could cause us issues, ensnaring bridge or something like that, we can just get rid of it. You will notice that everything except I'm going to have to say it again. Gruul Orrery. I hope I'm getting that right. Everything is 3 mana or less. That's purely because of the Bloodbraid Elves. So we want to still be able to cascade into them. But that is the deck. We're hoping to get big damage early and just finish our opponents off early. I did forget to mention, because I thought I'd mention it last, 1 copy of FUD. It's basically Fling, but costs 1 less, and it's sorcery. So it's an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. FUD deals damage equal to sacrifice creature's power to any target. So let's say we get to turn 4, they're on 12, play one of these, 6. If they don't block it or they don't stop damage, get 6 through. In our end main phase, we can play FUD. It's going to go to the graveyard anyway, so we can deal just on those 2 cards alone 12 damage, which is absolutely insane. It's only a one-off because if I hit it with Bloodbraid Elf, it could be not very good. Essentially, if I've got an empty board, I play Bloodbraid, hit a FUD. I'd rather just keep the Bloodbraid and just not even play the FUD, which I do have the option to do, but you don't want it to come up too often, so just the 1 copy. So yeah, that's my deck. I really hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech and check out the games. I'm quite intrigued to see how this goes. I'm not certain it's going to go well, but if we pick up a few wins, it should be fun. Thanks for watching.